Critical update alert. This is breaking news. If you're an XRP holder, this could be the moment that decides whether you're chasing wealth or building it. And in these next 90 seconds, you're going to want to hang tight. Otherwise, you may miss highly valuable information. Make sure that you like and subscribe this video. It really helps me get the message to the masses and is greatly appreciated. At the time of recording, XRP is trading around $3. If you're watching later, the price may have shifted. This is not financial advice. Always do your own research and consult with professionals before making any wild decisions. All right, let's get into it. The road to a potential $20,000 XRP may have just begun, and it's being paved with one word that most of the market isn't ready for yet: privacy. What I'm about to show you is not another hype cycle or rumor. It's a confirmed development that changes the very foundation of how value moves across the XRP ledger. Here's what happened. Ripple quietly confirmed that privacy is coming natively to the XRPL protocol through its RippleX dev division. This isn't a plugin, this isn't a sidechain, this is at the protocol level. Meaning every transaction, every tokenized asset, every institutional settlement will soon be able to operate with selective privacy built directly into the ledger. Now that may sound technical, but it's much bigger than that. Because privacy, not speculation, not memes, is what unlocks institutional scale money flow. Until now, banks and governments could never touch public ledgers without risking data exposure. They needed the ability to transact confidentially while staying compliant. And that's exactly what Ripple's team is now building into XRP. Chad Steinraber, one of the most respected analysts in the XRP community, said it bluntly. The road to $20,000 XRP is paved with privacy. And that's because the moment the world's biggest liquidity players can settle on XRP without exposing trade secrets, it transitions from being a digital asset into a financial rail. Think about that. Global banks, clearinghouses, and payment networks all using the same protocol to move trillions silently, compliantly, instantly. You are going to want to hang tight because over the next 60 seconds comes the big reveal. That's why I'm calling this the hidden update that changes everything. Because Ripple didn't just confirm privacy, they confirmed the missing link that every major institution has been waiting for since 2017. Here's how to think about it. Every blockchain has its weakness. Bitcoin is too slow, Ethereum is too expensive, Solana too volatile. XRP's only real limitation was privacy, and Ripple just solved it. Once this goes live, the XRPL becomes the first compliance-grade settlement layer that offers both speed and confidentiality. Picture this. A central bank in Singapore wants to settle a bond payment with an investment fund in Switzerland. Both entities want to comply with regulations, but neither wants their competitors to see internal balance sheets. Using programmable privacy, both can transact through the XRP ledger. The transaction is validated on-chain, but the sensitive data stays hidden, visible only to those who need to see it. That's not fantasy. That's what Ripple is enabling right now through zero-knowledge proofs, ZKPs, and trusted execution environments, TEEs. Now, before you tune out at the technical words, here's what those mean in human terms. ZKPs are like a digital lie detector test. You can prove a statement is true. For example, this transaction is legal and verified, without revealing the private details. TEs, on the other hand, are like a vault inside your computer's hardware that keeps sensitive computations isolated from everything else. Put those together, and you get what Ripple calls programmable privacy. It means institutions can prove transactions meet every regulation without ever exposing the private data behind them. And that's where the institutional floodgates open. Because in the current financial system, privacy isn't optional. It's required. It's not about hiding, it's about compliance. A global bank can't risk leaking transaction counterparties. A corporation can't show its treasury moves on a public ledger. And no regulator wants an untraceable black box. Programmable privacy satisfies all three sides at once. Transparency for those who need it, and confidentiality for those who must have it. That's why this update isn't just a feature. It's the framework for the next global financial architecture. It's what allows trillions of dollars locked inside corporate treasuries, sovereign funds, and trade finance instruments to finally move on-chain. Here's the part that few understand. Privacy isn't about secrecy. It's about control. It's about giving institutions the confidence to operate at scale, knowing they can reveal information only when required. That kind of confidence is what brings Wall Street, sovereign banks, and Fortune 500s into the same ecosystem. So when you hear Ripple adds privacy to XRP, don't think of small transactions. Think of settlement-grade infrastructure. the kind of foundation that can move $650 trillion in tokenized financial contracts, all verified, all compliant, all invisible to competitors. Now combine that with XRP's speed, energy efficiency, and liquidity network, and you realize this is the update that transforms XRP from a speculative digital asset into the invisible backbone of real-world value exchange. The competition can't replicate this easily. Bitcoin can't do it without sidechains. Ethereum can, but not without gas fees and contract risk. Solana's uptime and audit compliance are inconsistent. Ripple's solution is simple, efficient, and regulator-ready, a trifecta that global finance has been waiting for. So the question is no longer if XRP becomes the bridge for the world's money. It's how soon. And if you think the $20,000 prediction sounds impossible, remember that the value of a bridge isn't in how often it's used by retail. It's in how critical it becomes to the system. If XRP becomes the foundation for institutional privacy and settlement, its valuation stops being about hype. It starts being about infrastructure. When you zoom out from the headlines and focus on the plumbing, you start to see how this actually works in motion. Privacy isn't a story about secrecy. It's a story about scale. Every payment rail, every clearinghouse, and every bank compliance officer has one job: move money safely without exposing sensitive data. For the first time, XRP can deliver that in one native system. Here's the mechanic. When an institution transacts through Ripple's new privacy layer, the transaction goes through two gates. The first gate is a zero-knowledge proof that confirms the transaction follows all regulatory rules. KYC verified within thresholds, legally cleared. The second gate is a trusted execution environment that performs the computation and settlement inside an encrypted vault. Only the results are broadcast to the network, not the data itself. The world sees confirmation, not contents. That means two powerful things happen simultaneously. Institutions can settle at lightning speed with the confidence of regulatory compliance, and the network gains legitimacy that public blockchains have lacked for a decade. Every successful transaction like that sends a signal. This ledger can now host the kind of money that used to live only inside banking terminals. Now think about liquidity. Every time a corridor activates, say a trade finance bridge between the EU and Africa, XRP is locked temporarily as bridge liquidity. Multiply that across thousands of corridors and you get structural absorption. XRP being taken out of the open market and put to work as institutional collateral. The float doesn't just shrink, it gets rehypothecated inside the system where retail can't reach it. When that happens, market behavior changes. Volatility doesn't disappear, but it shifts. You start to see compression, narrow ranges that suddenly snap into expansion because depth is gone. That's what traders call a supply vacuum. And when a supply vacuum meets institutional inflows, repricing isn't gradual, it's explosive. That's why Chad Steinreber's comment hits so hard. The road to $20,000 XRP is paved with privacy isn't hyperbole. It's an equation. Privacy brings institutions. Institutions bring corridors. Corridors absorb supply. Absorption forces revaluation, step by step, quietly, mathematically. And here's what most retail investors miss. Institutions don't buy headlines. They buy compliance. Once Ripple finishes integrating programmable privacy, XRP stops competing with coins. It starts competing with SWIFT. And SWIFT moves about $5 trillion a day. Even a tiny fraction of that volume routed through XRP changes the entire market structure forever. If you are enjoying this content, make sure that you like and subscribe this video. It really helps me get the message to the masses and is greatly appreciated. So the next phase isn't about hype, it's about activation. The rails are almost ready, the technology is live in DevNets, and the conversations behind closed doors are no longer, should we? They're, when do we switch it on? Because once privacy goes live at the protocol level, every major institution on the sidelines suddenly has no reason to wait. When you picture what's happening to XRP's ecosystem right now, think of it as a massive dam holding back a flood of institutional liquidity. On one side sits years of development, regulation, and corporate hesitation. On the other side, a rising wall of demand. Central banks, payment networks, hedge funds, all waiting for a compliant path to move real money on-chain. The dam is privacy. Once that concrete gives way, the flow isn't going to trickle, it's going to roar. You can already see the cracks forming. Exchange reserves are falling, developer activity is surging, and more financial institutions are quietly connecting to RippleNet's on-demand liquidity corridors, now enhanced by programmable privacy architecture. Every brick that weakens is one more sign that the infrastructure is almost ready to transition from testing to real-world use. Retail traders often misunderstand these calm phases. They think nothing's happening because price looks flat. But in the professional world, flat means accumulation. It's the silence before demand overwhelms supply. Institutions move methodically. They don't chase candles. They position under radar. The moment retail boredom peaks is often the moment institutions have already built their foothold. Psychology always drives the turning points. Retail wants excitement. Institutions want certainty. Retail needs a reason to believe. Institutions need a reason to act. Privacy gives them that reason. The last missing piece that lets them move with confidence and regulatory cover. Once that assurance locks in, liquidity migration begins. Think about it. A bank doesn't buy XRP to speculate. It uses XRP as infrastructure. But to do that, it must hold liquidity in advance. Each corridor it opens requires XRP reserves to function. Those reserves are not for trading. They're for throughput. And once they're allocated, they rarely return to public markets. That's why price reactions often look delayed or sudden. The demand builds invisibly until the dam bursts. At first, a small crack, maybe a spike to $5 or $10, then a gush, 20, 50, 100. By the time the public realizes what's happening, the water level on their side of the dam is already dropping fast. You can see the same behavior in past cycles. Before XRP's 2017 breakout, liquidity quietly dried up for months. Before the 2021 surge, exchange balances fell sharply weeks before price followed. History doesn't repeat perfectly, but it rhymes. And this rhyme has a new verse called privacy. What makes this different from every previous cycle is that this time the revaluation won't just come from retail mania. It'll be engineered by institutions integrating real volume. The emotional spikes of retail euphoria will look small compared to the tidal flow of actual settlement capital. Here's the truth most people miss. The market isn't waiting for permission, it's waiting for plumbing. Once the pipes are connected and pressure builds, the outcome is predetermined. You don't argue with a dam bursting. You just decide whether you're standing in front of it or behind it when it breaks. And that's where we are right now, moments away from a structural shift that turns skepticism into shock. In the final 30 seconds, which you're going to want to stick around so you don't miss this critical piece, we'll zoom out to the macro scale. How privacy positions XRP as the backbone of compliant global finance, how this ties to central bank digital currencies and tokenized assets, and why the next phase isn't about crypto at all. It's about the new financial system. When the history of digital finance is written, this will be remembered as the moment everything changed, the moment XRP evolved from an asset people traded to the infrastructure nations relied on. Privacy wasn't just an upgrade, it was the unlock. It transformed XRP into the first bridge that institutions can actually trust. Central banks need it, hedge funds need it, corporations need it, because no one moves trillions on open ledgers without confidentiality, compliance, and finality. And XRP now offers all three. While most of the world still sees price, insiders see plumbing. They see corridors going live, liquidity migrating, and the silent rewiring of global payments underneath our feet. Bitcoin may remain the digital reserve. Ethereum may host the apps. But XRP, the ledger with privacy, compliance, and speed, will move the money that runs the world. So when someone asks if $20,000 XRP is even possible, remember this: price follows utility, and utility follows inevitability. The foundation is already built. The switch is about to flip. This is not financial advice, but it is a reminder. The invisible revolution doesn't shout. It hums quietly behind the screens of central banks and payment giants, until one day it's everywhere, all at once. The new financial era has already started. Its name is XRP.